Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen along with Michael Duarte. He's filling in for Bob, which is on vacation.
Bob's out there having a good time.
He's having a good time, and we got John Lutz with us from the California Highway Patrol. He's been with the Highway Patrol for, close to 30 years. So, John, you must have seen some stuff.
Just a few things. Feeling a little old now. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you must have seen some stuff, though.
Yeah, it's pretty grisly out there at times, and like we mentioned before, there's a lot of kids in this valley, a lot of teen drivers, a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience, and a lot of bad choices.
Yeah.
And you mix those together, and that comes up with a bad combination.
And we really need to be, as parents, examples to our children. I really believe that if that's where they learn. If we're driving down the street and somebody cuts us off and we start screaming and cussing and trying to blow the horn and stuff, that's what we're teaching our kid. If the light's changing from green to yellow to red and we floor it, going 60 miles an hour, that's where our kids learn this stuff.
John and I were just talking about that before the show, that parents have such an influence on their kids, and you look out there at all you have to do is get out on the roads here and you know what's going on. It's not very good. And teens are seeing that. Hey, mom and dad are cutting through red lights, mom and dad are cutting through stop signs, mom and dad are cutting off drivers, they're speeding. What am I going to do?
Yeah, no, and they really are learning it from us. And maybe we think we're cool by doing it, but we're not.
No. And statistics show that if parents use seatbelts, teens are more prone to use seatbelts.
I think these days, and maybe I'm wrong, most people wear seatbelts now, yeah?
There's about a 98+% compliance rate in California, which is good, but remember that those that aren't wearing them and those that are involved in collisions, out of the fatal collisions, there are 50% of the people who are involved in fatal collisions die as a result of not wearing their belt.
Wow.
So
That's
half
heavy.
of those are preventable.
Wow. All they had to do was wear their seatbelts and they would be alive.
So with teen drivers, we've got the situation where first of all, they're learning from their parents from an early age.
Just to change it for a second, it's a little different here in Santa Clarita too, because the speed limit's so high anyways. 50 miles an hour on some of the streets in the canyon. So if it's 50, people drive 60. It's just the rule of thought. Am I wrong?
Well, we hope that's not the case, but
I think it is.
I don't think the speeds are any higher here in this valley than in other valleys, and basically speeds are based off legislation anyway.
Right.
On the 85th percentile of the community that's driving by. They do surveys all the time.
Right.
But
we just have a lot more kind of highways and stuff here, I think, anyways.
I think we have a lot of canyon roads.
Yeah.
And we have two of the fastest freeways in the state.
All right.
So the Antelope, 14. We call that the Antelope 500.
Which can become, the Antelope 500.
Well, when you listen to the news every day, and what do you hear? Accident on the 14, accident on the 14, accident on the 14.
Right.
So we got to get the news on board with the crash and collision on the 14.
Yeah.
One of these days.
Oh, there you go. I used the A word again.
Yeah, you
I don't
did.
use the A word.
But what about, and then we have the Youth Memorial here too,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good example. I think that, when your kid starts to drive, it might be a good place to take them.
It's a great place. There's 91, I believe, represented up there right now of the youth that have died in a vehicle-related collision, one way or another, whether they're a passenger, a driver, or just a victim. And that's a percentage of the youth that have died in this valley. That's not all of them. And when you see the sheer numbers, that's where just the volume while you're standing there is pretty daunting.
Yeah.
And then the fact that the construction of the actual site itself still has plenty of room.
And let's bring up our listeners up to speed with this. We're talking about the Youth Grove in Central Park that is represented by stumps, tree stumps that look like tree stumps that were cut off because they were very young drivers, and these are people that actually died in automobile accidents. And as Cary said, this is
These are just really children.
Yeah, they are. And
it doesn't represent the adults.
And it's a marvelous place to take your teen. They're getting ready to drive. Say, look, this is serious. This is how serious it is. Here are people that never got to see their life.
Right. Because it's like you were saying earlier, it's almost a fantasy for children. It's almost like it'll never happen to me.
Well, I teach a lot of classes, and with a lot of the teens and a lot of the youth that come to these classes, or whether they're mandated to go or not, you get a lot of response from the teens when you crack jokes such as, grand theft, 22 or whatever's out right now,
Right.
and they're playing that and resetting it, and they have a video game mentality, and if they have not experienced those close calls like we all have as adults in a vehicle, then they don't understand. And until they do, until they're taught that, whether they do it by their own mistakes or by the mistakes of others.
Now, we talk about texting while driving, especially with teens, right? And I think it's really important to put that in perspective. And just for our listeners out there, try to imagine this.
Yeah, listen to this. This is heavy.
The average text or read typing is 4.6 seconds. Now, it takes in just 3 seconds of texting while driving at 65 miles an hour is equal to driving 100 yards, or picture this, the length of a football field blindfolded. Come on. Can you imagine driving your car at 65 miles an hour down a football field blindfolded? But
I
imagine
can.
that being a car.
I see it every day.
Yes, unfortunately we do.
Wow. That's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's rampant because everybody believes that they can pull it off. Everybody believes that they can do it until something happens. So again, not very good at measuring risk versus reward, whether they're adult or whether they're
Well,
teen.
and you're on the streets. This is what you do. You see these accidents, don't you?
We see a lot of crashes and collisions.
You see them, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, you got me that time. No, you actually see them. And the reason why we call them crashes and collisions, not accidents, is again why?
Well, they're preventable. Someone had to create a problem there, and it's very rare to have someone say, "Oh, there's an accident. The earth opened up and I fell in the hole." That might be considered an accident. But or I was struck by lightning. I can get that. But when you run a red light or you're driving too fast, you create that situation, and you cause the collision. You cause the crash. There's always the talk about, "Oh, well, I hit black ice." Well, black ice doesn't crawl up from underneath the ground, grab your car, and throw it into the ditch.
Right.
You woke up in the morning when it was 20 degrees out, there's water running across the roadway. You should know, as a experienced defensive driver, that it might be slick out there, so you might want to slow down.
I grew up in Alaska, and I can tell you absolutely, you better know how to get through that too, or you will wind up in a bad accident. Or a collision, as John
Thank
would
you.
have us say.
I'm changing culture.
He is.
Right now.
He is.
I still I'm laughing, but I'm laughing, but I'm thinking. And what I'm thinking is, I don't want my kid driving anymore. but obviously, she's going to drive. And I'm hoping that she's smart enough to know that, hey, you don't text and drive. You don't pick up the phone. You don't do all that stuff. I wish I could say I was a better role model, but I'm not. I've been trying really hard. Not the texting anymore. I don't do that because I know how dangerous it is.
I have to tell you, I saw a guy the
And
other
I have
day.
Bluetooth, so that's better.
I saw a guy the other day, and I have to believe this was because he was texting or on the phone at the time, but he pulled out onto Soledad from a side street. And no sooner did he pull out, and I was sitting at the intersection waiting for light, he pulled out, and he ended up over the median to his left, and then straightened it out finally. I can't imagine any other reason than he wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. He almost ended up in oncoming traffic lane.
Well, like we were saying, you think about it for a second. It only takes a second or two to blow everything. So if you're on your phone, if you're texting or something, and you look up, it could be, oops, too late.
Risk versus reward.
Risk versus reward, exactly. This is Families in Action on your local hometown station, AM 1220. KHTS, we'll be coming back with John Lutz from the California Highway Patrol. Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen. My co-host is Mike Doherty, and we got John Lutz with the California Highway Patrol. I was going to say we're talking about teen driving, but I think it's a little more than that. It's about teen driving. It's about changing culture. It's about a lot of stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because what I was saying to John on our break, Mike and I is where do you want to go when we come back? And we're going to go over some 11 facts about teen driving. But it's more than that. And we'll talk about the culture and stuff after that. So Mike, you want to do some of these facts? Or John, either one.
Sure. One of the things, let's start it off with this. 33% of deaths among 13 to 19-year-olds in 2010, now we're going back a ways, occurred in motor vehicle crashes. Didn't say accidents, John.
33% of
That's because
deaths.
it's written.
Yeah.
You're
Stop
exactly
it.
right.
The people listening didn't know that, John.
One third of people 13 and 19 that lose their lives because of car crashes.
It's their leading cause of death.
Leading cause of death for 13 and 19-year-old children.
And what age group?
And by the way, extremely preventable.
Oh, absolutely. And what age group has the higher crash rate than any other age group?
What is it?
16.
16.
16 is the
Newly licensed drivers.
Right.
Newly licensed, yeah. By the way, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was sort of slow, I guess, because I never got a driver's license till I was 19.
Really?
Yeah. So I must have been a better driver automatically. Actually not, because your brain doesn't fully adjust until you're in your 20s.
We talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
I was on the
That's a
job
fact.
before I was fully
So it's not just
adjusted.
teenagers, it's those 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds.
You were
Yeah.
cruising the highways.
That's right. It was
Keeping
Yeah,
us
well,
safe.
they gave him a gun. Can you imagine?
That's right. I got in a car.
sketchy. Check that.
That's sketchy.
Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. Statistics show that 16 and 17-year-old driver death rates increase with each additional passenger, teen passengers. Why? Because they're saying, hey, how fast can this thing go? Hey.
Isn't it 6 months they're not allowed to have passengers, something
No,
like that?
it's their first provisional year,
Right,
and that's
okay.
let's think about the new rules they have. I mean, we didn't have these when we got driver's licenses.
That's for sure.
Okay, of course they didn't have numbers like this either, but they're not allowed to drive between 11 at night and 5 in the morning.
Right.
Why do they use that time parameter? It's a real simple answer. That's when they're dying. And the same thing with why they can't drive passengers around. The reason they can't drive passengers around for that first year is because they're killing each other. So the numbers are increased not only during that time parameter, but with other bodies.
Here's an
So
interesting...
so the system's not just trying to be mean, it's because these are statistical facts. Kids are
Absolute
dying
fact.
on these hours.
Correct.
Here's an interesting fact, and after I read the fact, I have a short story to go along with this. But it says only 44% of teens said they would definitely speak up if someone were driving in a way that scared them. Now, listen to this. So my son, in his teenage years, high school, he says his girlfriend, who's now driving, new driver, she's going to drive my wife and I somewhere. And we get in the car with her, and right away we notice she has a horrible habit. She's flying up to to cars at intersections and slamming on her brakes to stop at the intersection. And my wife and I are sitting back there, and we're saying, you might want to slow down a little bit more. And so after we get out of the car, we tell our son, that is extremely dangerous. Does she do that all the time? And he goes, hey, you can relax. She's never had an accident. Of course, she'd only been driving for 2 seconds, right? A week later, my son came up to us looking sheepish, and he said, my friend that's driving, how she put her brakes on at the last minute? She rear-ended a car. We said, oh, maybe she'll learn to slow down a little bit before she gets to the intersection. So her bad habit, which our son said was not a problem, ended up causing her to rear end a car, which means that her mommy and daddy got to shell out some money to the insurance company, didn't they?
Doesn't that take you right into point 6, where teen drivers with involved parents are twice as likely to wear their seatbelts, etc.? And I guarantee you there'd be better drivers as well with that involved parent.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I can't see how anybody... I remember when the seatbelt law first came out, and when I was growing up, there were no seatbelt laws, and nobody wore them. They just didn't wear them.
Actually, I have to tell you something. Our family just decided to get in a habit long before the law became
Did you?
true. Just because my wife and I were looking at our kids and we thought, this is just a good thing. We just need to start doing it.
I could not see myself driving without a seatbelt now. I just couldn't even see it.
I remember sleeping in the windshield on the dash coming back from Ohio to California.
Oh, yeah?
As a little youngster.
The kids, I still see people doing that with kids running around their cars driving. But no, years ago, before all these laws, that's what it was. Kids were not in seatbelts.
No, not
They
at
were
all.
just running around the car doing their thing. But I guess the statistics and the numbers out there came up and said, something really bad is happening here, and we better pay attention. So laws like seatbelts, no texting, they're there for a reason. Teenagers not driving kids around for the first year, not driving between 11 and 5 in the morning. We're trying to save lives.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
Trying to lower that mileage death rate.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier, it's the leading cause of death for children. And we'd sure like to, I mean, I know I would like to see that change. I'm sure you guys would too. That's why
Absolutely.
these laws are here.
1 in 5 16-year-olds have a collision within the first year of driving. 1 in 5. If somebody says that's not going to happen to me, well, line up 5 and pick one.
Well, happened to my daughter. She made it. She made it about a month and rear-ended a car in Sand Canyon, not texting or anything else. She just did. It happens. They're not paying. They're not trained enough to pay attention.
Yeah.
Again, learning from someone else's mistakes, I think, is the best way, and that's where the parents can get involved and let them know, hey, when you go a little bit too fast, this is kind of what happens. And the more you involve yourself in their learning process in that entire first year, the better off they're going to be.
And that's fact number 9. 56% of teenagers rely on their parents to learn how to drive. Now think about that. That can be a good thing. It can also be a scary thing. We drive on the roads all day long, and we see quote unquote adults driving like people who got their driver's license out of a Cheerios box.
Or swap meet.
Bad stuff going on out there. And who's learning? The kids are sitting in the back seat going, let's see, mommy doesn't stop at stop signs. Daddy doesn't give a signal when he changes lanes. Dad changes lanes like it's going out of style. They both speed. What are they learning?
I like Cheerios, by the way.
Do you like
Yes, I
Cheerios?
like
Well, you used to get cool things out of the box, but I don't think a driver's license was one of them.
No, it wasn't one of them. On that note, let's go ahead and take a break. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.